I saw those bodies, and whoever mutilated them has a very special problem.
Hi everyone, I wanted to try a tag that Juan from Plagued by Visions put up, and I've seen a few other pictures put up, some of the people I watch all the time. So Criminali did it. Did Criminali do it? So Michael K. Vaughan did it, and I've seen a couple of others. And anyway, I thought I'd try this tag because I think it's a really interesting one, and it really does celebrate what's great about the horror genre. So the horror genre has lots of different facets. It can be scary, it can be disturbing, it can be creepy, it can make you think, it can be philosophical, it can be based on relationships, it can be all about exploring our fears, and it can be funny. And I think that's what Juan was trying to get at, the idea that there are loads and loads of different facets to horror, which I think is a really interesting thing to discuss in a video like this. So, the Faces of Horror tag. Okay, so 6 prompts, but I'm going to talk about more than 6 things. What I'd like to do is actually cover a few different things, which would include books, films, TV shows, or TV show, and game as well. I'm going to mention a game. So when it talks about stories, so horror stories, Juan made a big point about saying it was going to be, the prompts are about horror stories and not necessarily horror books. And the game I'm going to mention has got a storyline. It's definitely a story, but yeah, creeped me out, something chronic. So let's have a look at that. So prompt number 1, a story that scared you or disturbed you or creeped you out. So I'm going to start with a book. So I was really pleased to discover how much I enjoyed Joe Hill's stuff. It's the first book I've read by him, and I've now got Nosferatu to read, which I'm really looking forward to. And I read this in the Halloween period last year, and I found it really really tense, really tense. And I remember there was one bit of it. It was when the ghosty character was controlling the main character. It's a while ago since I read this, but it was just really disturbing and really quite creepy and stuff. And I remember just being so tense reading it, and I just thought, yeah, that's what horror's about. And I thought it was really effective. So I like the way Joe Hill writes, and he created a lot of tension in the pages, and that definitely did disturb me. And if you like, if the right word is scare me, I don't know, but certainly did disturb me and creep me out. So that was definitely a moment in my recent reading where a book did that to me. So I also want to mention a film which it really did creep me out. I found it really uncomfortable to watch, but I think it seemed to have that balance of being uncomfortable to watch, but also you wanted to carry on watching it to see how the story unfolded. And that was Wes Craven's film from 1991, The People Under the Stairs. So it doesn't get mentioned a lot, and it could be because it's not extreme enough, or because it just wasn't commercial enough, didn't make a lot of money at the box office or whatever, could be that. But I'll always remember it as being one of those horror films that I've just found really hard to watch. And I remember one scene in particular where the mother character, who's kind of torturing her daughter, puts her in a bath of like boiling water, in the sense of it scorching her, and it's just horrible. Yeah, I remember that scene thinking that's just horrific. So People Under the Stairs is definitely something that really creeped me out when I watched it, and I'll never forget it. And also, I need to talk about The Last of Us. So this is a PlayStation game, and I'm sure lots of people know of this game because it really is an incredible game. The story is fantastic, the characterization is fantastic, and the gameplay is great, obviously. But what I found really creepy and disturbing and kind of scary when you're playing it is the infected and different levels of the infected. So it was the sound design is fantastic, and the design of the infected creatures is brilliant, and it's just really creepy. So yeah, there are other games that have done the same sort of thing, but Last of Us just got you totally immersed in the story as well. It's so well written. So yeah, if you've played that game, you know what I'm talking about. Absolutely amazing. So prompt number 2 is a horror story that depressed you or made you cry. So both those things don't necessarily apply. It didn't make me cry. It didn't depress me. But I do want to mention a film that I found really melancholic, and the whole tone of the film is quite sad. And it does leave you with a feeling at the end of it that it was a great story and you kind of enjoyed watching it, but it was very downbeat. And that is a film that is based on a book that I need to read, but it's the film Let the Right One In. So it's about, I think it's a Swedish film, I think it's Swedish, certainly Scandinavian film about a boy who meets a girl who's a vampire, and he's getting bullied and at school, and she's kind of trying to sort of hide away and not be noticed, and the both of them strike up a friendship, and what that's been set up with these relationships at school and stuff like that gets played out within this vampire setting, and it's very, very melancholic. It's very atmospheric. It's kind of beautiful but sad and kind of depressing, but yeah, I think it's a great film. But I'm intrigued to find out what the book's like. If anyone's read the book, let me know what you think of the book. I haven't read the remake. I haven't seen the remake. Well, I haven't read the remake either, but I haven't seen the remake. But the original Scandinavian film is an amazing film, but very sad. Okay, prompt number 3, a horror story that made you laugh. So I'm going to go with a film, a book, 2 films and a book. All right. So the book I'm going to mention is a book that I just found online as a list of recommended funny science fiction books, and it's more horror than science fiction because it's all about zombies. But I found it funny. It's called Night of the Living Trekkies, and it's a zombie breakout that happens during a sci-fi convention full of Trekkies, so a Star Trek convention, and there's loads of in-jokes about Star Trek fans in it. I'm a big Star Trek fan, so I enjoyed all that sort of stuff, and it's just a little silly book about zombies in the sci-fi convention, but it did make me laugh. So yeah, it's a very easy read. If you think, oh, that piques my curiosity, then I quite enjoyed it. I've got a friend in America who watches and listens to and reads a lot of sci-fi, and he didn't like it much. So that's the only other person I know that's read it, but I quite enjoyed it. So, Journey to the Final Frontier of Sci-Fi Zombie Horror. Yeah, Night of the Living Trekkies. Film-wise, so 1981, you've got one of the greatest films of all time. It's a classic horror film. It's also funny, and that is John Landis's An American Werewolf in London. I love that film so much, and there's lots of funny moments in it, as well as being genuinely serious in moments. And I think one of the greatest scenes in all the cinema is the transformation scene, and that's not a comfortable scene. You know, I think it starts with him pacing around the room with these songs in the background that are all mentioning moons or werewolves, wolves and that kind of stuff, mostly moons. And then he screams, Jesus Christ, because he's in so much pain, and that's it. He starts transforming. It's so brilliant. But quite serious, that bit. And yeah, it's a comedy film, but it's also a horror film, and it is horrific, and it does play both things really well, I think, and not many films can do both things at the same time very well. Usually it falls into one of the other categories. So American Werewolf in London is a really good shout out for a horror that made me laugh. And another one, which is a more recent viewing, I watched this about a year ago, and 2 years ago, probably about 2 years ago now. Yeah, I watched this about 2 years ago, and I think it's hilarious, really, really funny. It's completely mad. It's a Japanese film called The Happiness of the Katakuris. It's from 2001, and everything happens in it. The dialogue is really funny. I can't believe it's a translation because just some of it it's just really funny what they say, and there's all sorts of horrific things that happen in it. But it's a musical. It's almost like a zombie apocalypse crossed with Sound of Music, but with this insane dialogue. If you've seen Happiness of the Categories, you know what I mean. Check it out because it is a really funny film, but completely mad. Yeah, it's directed by Mike Takashi, and yeah, it's just crazy film. So that does make me laugh. I thought it was a really funny film. So yeah, have a look at that. Prompt number 4 is a horror story that made you angry. So that's an interesting one. And I'm just going to go with one film that really has pissed me off right from when the first time I saw it. I've actually seen it twice now, so what am I doing? But I've seen it twice, and both times it annoyed me. And I know that there was some kind of intelligent thought behind it. Absolutely get that. But I think the coldness of the film and the detached voyeurism of the film means that the filmmaker is complicit in what's happening. So the film, some of you horror fans would have seen this. So a German film by Michael Haneke called Funny Games. So Funny Games, I watched it and I found the whole thing uncomfortable to watch, disturbing, all that sort of stuff. That clearly that's the whole point. And then, do I spoil the ending? Yeah, why not? And in the ending, it just carries on like that. This family getting tortured after a home invasion, and that's it. So there's no plot. You're literally just voyeuristically watching this thing being played out to no real end. I mean, there is an end, but it could, and it is quite a final end. But the whole thing is, I guess, designed to make you realise that you're being a voyeur. Well, I knew that. So yeah, it did annoy me a lot when I watched it. I was so angry because of what it built up in the story, and there's no payoff. So yeah, clearly he was being very clever, but I want a bit of payoff. So yeah, that really annoyed me, that film. Funny Games. And why have I seen it twice? Anyway, prompt number 5 is a bit more of a lovely thing. It's horror stories that are important to you. So I'm going to pick, clearly I need to quickly throw that out there. Keep that there for a second. Move on. Oh my God, how many times are you going to mention that book? So just as far as one of the first books I read, and an author that's really important to me, but it's very clearly a horror story, and that's Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes. It's a beautiful story. It's kind of poetic, but it's definitely a sort of fantasy horror thing, and it's playing on the way that Mr. Dark plays on our fears and plays on our fear of getting old. It definitely he manipulates the town with this sort of evil circus, that great trope, and it's just brilliantly done. And it really did make me want to read more when I was a teenager. So Something Wicked This Way Comes, absolutely phenomenal and really important book to me. And 2 films that I'm going to mention that are important to me, that are in the horror genre. A film that I just feel I have a lot of affection for it, partly because it's rare that a vampire film just seems to have the right kind of aesthetic for me, and that's the film Near Dark. It's a Catherine Bigelow film. I didn't double check the dates, but it's something like, was it 1990, something like that? Not sure. 1989, 1990. I don't know, I can't remember. But anyway, Near Dark. I love that film, and that's a really important film to me. But more importantly than that, I think the film that expanded my mind as far as what kind of cinema I'd want to watch, and looking for indie cinema, looking for the sort of things that are off the beaten track a little bit, and that's always been a big moment for me when I saw the film, and that's a French black and white 1960 horror film called Eyes Without a Face. if you've seen Eyes Without a Face, it probably blew my mind. I love it so much. I'm trying to get, my daughter's massively into horror. I'm trying to get her to watch the film. I'm sure she'll love it. It's such a great film. It's a very bleak film. So sometimes those, like same what I was saying before about Let the Right One In, it does leave you with a sort of a melancholic feeling because it's so downbeat, and it has got a really downbeat ending, but kind of a beautiful poetic ending as well, weirdly. But yeah, it's definitely very bleak, but it's so brilliant. It's so good. So I think I actually just watched it because I knew the Billy Idol song. I thought, oh, what's this about? Eyes Without a Face. But it's brilliant film. If you've seen that, let me know if you've seen it. 1960 French black and white horror film, Eyes Without a Face. So good, so good. And prompt number 6 is a horror story that you would call a horror that isn't generally regarded as horror. So I'm going to start with a book or a story that's in a book, and then I'm going to talk about a film. So at some point I'm going to talk a little bit more about Harlan Ellison, but this was again one of the first books I bought. I treasure this copy. I've got All the Sounds of Fear, and this book contains the story I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is probably a familiar phrase because it's such an iconic, famous science fiction short story, but it's horrific. I mean, I'd say it's more, you could say it's more of a horror story than a science fiction story. It's about a power crazy computer that he's got the last remaining humans left in his clutches, if you like. It's in his control, and he's just torturing them for the whole story. And it's just really bleak and nasty and horrible and brutal, and it's brilliantly written. It's really vivid. It's very immersive, powerful, and not nice. And I think it's definitely a horror story, but obviously because of the setting, because of the presence of the AI, it's a classic science fiction story, but definitely horror. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, a film which is not definitely, I've never heard this being considered as a horror film. It's one of the greatest films ever made, I think. I absolutely love it so much. It's very clearly a science fiction film, but there's a lot of body horror in it. So without any spoilers about what happens, if you've seen the film, you can probably relate to what I'm saying. If you haven't seen the film, rush out and watch it. As soon as you finish watching this video, watch this film. District 9. District 9, Neil Blomkamp's fantastic one-off, I think. It's a great film about the way we treat aliens, and not just aliens as in the science fiction aliens, but also there are definitely allegorical stuff in there about our treatment of the other, or about the immigrants and those kind of things, and how we distrust them and how we give them ghettos to live in and those kind of things. There's loads of stuff like that in the film, but when the plot kicks in and you start getting the body horror in the film, it's really, really, you like, what's going to happen next, and it really keeps surprising you, and it's just such a brilliant and beautiful film in places, but it's definitely quite a brutal film as well in places. So yeah, if you haven't seen District 9, you've got to go see it. You've got to see it, you know, find a way of seeing it and watch it. It's quite old now. Can't remember the date of it, but yeah, at least 10 years old. And anyway, District 9, that's my little shout out for a film that's not really considered to be horror, but is definitely horrific and has lots of body horror in it. So yeah, that's my response to the 6 prompts. The Faces of Horror tag. It's a great tag, and I think if Criminology hasn't done it yet, then it'd be good to see Criminology do it. If Rachel's Shades of Orange hasn't done it, it'd be good to see Shades of Orange, because her channel is mostly about horror. And yeah, I mean, loads of people will probably be tagged by now, because I'm going to schedule this for about 10 days' time, because we've got a couple of other things that are scheduled to come up. So I'm sure I'm going to be like the 8th video to have done this one. But anyway, Faces of Horror tag. Thanks a lot, Juan, for bringing it up. And see you later. Bye.
picture of what it's like to be you.